Turning points change the course of our lives, whether it's a big decision, overcoming an obstacle or tragedy, or taking a leap of faith. These stories of inspiration and resilience are what Turning Point is all about. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Turning Point. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Adrian Sutherland. Adrian is a singer, songwriter, speaker, and advocate from the Attawapiskat First Nation. Today, you'll hear about one of his biggest turning points. He was a CEO who decided to take a leap of faith and pursue his passion for music and focus on creating a life that revolved around family. Adrian, welcome to Turning Point.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I know I just mentioned your turning point there in the introduction, but I think it would be great if you could kind of set the stage for us. You left your job as CEO of a development company about 4 years ago. So tell us about what life was like for you at that point.
Yeah, I was with the company for 10 years. I actually started off as their the chief operations officer. And then they grew me into the CEO position, which I held for almost 4 years. And during the last 2 years in that role as CEO, I found it very, very stressful. Very little time off from work. Even when I was away on my vacation time, I was still working. It was just never ending. And I was in a very difficult work environment as well. And there was a lot of challenges that I had to navigate through in that role. So there were, it led me to kind of reconsider everything and sort of step back and look at my life and look at my career and I had to make some decisions, and I made the decision to step back from that role and pursue other opportunities.
Was there a moment for you when you knew that you needed to make that change?
Yeah, I was starting to get kind of brash, in meetings and getting frustrated and even some of the hard negotiations I was involved with, particularly contracts and procurement type of work. And I just started noticing myself just flying off the handle in some of the meetings, and I knew that wasn't me. That's not who I am, and I knew that it was coming from a place of stress, and I didn't like treating people that way, and I certainly didn't want people to treat me in that sort of way as well. So I think for me, in my body, it just wasn't feeling like it used to, and there's just a lot of things mentally and physically. It was draining. It was just really exhausting, and I think those were the sort of turning points for me. And of course, my family, being away from my family for weeks at a time, sometimes longer, traveling for business. So those were very difficult for me. And of course, having young children, and any parent can tell you that. When you miss out on those important events and miss out on those years, it's those are years that you can't get back. So those were some of the biggest deciding factors for me to turn around and step back and get away from all that.
I imagine after devoting so much of your life to working for this company, obviously being in a leadership role for a long time, it was probably challenging to have some of those conversations once you did make that final decision. Did it feel right at the time, or was it something that felt right later?
No, it was scary. It was a scary decision for me to make, stepping away, not having any kind of job or work. No steady income. And I've been working since I was a teenager. My first job I had when I was 16, and I've pretty much been working part-time and going to school, since I was a teen and all through my 20s. So I've always been working, and I've always, been, in academic programs and been in college and just so, then I worked for so long in a few different fields, and so it was so ingrained in me, to get up every day and go to work, and once that was gone, I started to feel very anxious. I felt like I needed to look for work, find a job. Maybe I should go back to work. All those thoughts were coming into my mind. So it was a very scary realization when I didn't have a job to go to anymore. And like I said, I just can't imagine someone who works, right up until they're 50, 60, and then suddenly one day they retire. It's just, it's got to be really, really difficult. I gambled. It was a leap of faith. I had music, of course, that I was driving, and I always drove that on the side. And at that point in my life, it wasn't full time yet, and it certainly wasn't bringing in any income. I was actually losing money going to shows. So it was something that I knew I was going to have to work very hard at. And there were some other things that I was into as well, like entrepreneurship. I always had the entrepreneurial spirit. So, I started a small business here in the community just over 6 years ago, and while I was still working as CEO. And it's a family business that we continue to operate today. So, again, you just never know when you venture out on your own, especially with entrepreneurial stuff. You just never know what to expect, and a lot of people fail miserably, pursuing ventures like that. We were able to pull together and pull through as a family and work together to get through some very difficult times, and it's starting to pay off finally 6 years later.
Well, that's great to hear, because as you kind of set the stage there and you think about, I'm thinking about myself having worked since I was a teenager as well. And, that the idea of not having that all of a sudden, it must have been really scary. You also mentioned your music there, and this is something that has also been a part of your life since you were a teenager. Do you remember those early days of music, or how you sort of became interested in music in the first place?
Well, I've always been around music for as long as I can remember, since I was a boy. My mom played, all my uncles played. I was always around live music. I as a teen, it was sort of the thing to do up here, to go to the community dances. The kids were allowed in. They got pretty wild. So, but we, it was something that we really enjoyed doing, and I really enjoyed the live entertainment, the live music. It's something I got really interested, especially in my teens, and that's when I started to kind of play more. I was doing a lot of guitar playing, and I wanted to be the best guitar player in the world. So I was spending a lot of time trying to build up my licks, and then I got sick of that. I got more interested in writing songs in my late teens, early 20s, and I started to write some pretty funny songs. And in those days, I'm sure were really horrible for some people to hear them.
Hey, we all have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned your mom there, and I'm reminded of one of the songs on your debut solo album. It is called Nowhere to Run. Can you tell us how your mom influenced this song?
Well, this is a song that I wrote several years back, and it really is about the mistreatment of Indigenous women. And my mom is a residential school survivor, and experienced a lot of difficult things during her time at the residential school. And only recently have I been learning about some of those things, because she never really talked about them up until recently. So, while most Canadians are hearing about some of the horrific things that the Indigenous people have experienced, a lot of us are just learning about it too. And we've had parents and grandparents in the residential school system. that never really talked about the horrific things that they experienced. So that's kind of where that song came from. And I don't know. I never really wanted to put it out because I've always felt like it was a sensitive issue, and being a male and writing about, the mistreatment of Indigenous women, I just didn't know if that was my place to do that. And I just felt really hesitant about it for a long time. And I think a big part of that song is telling, my mom's story, and some of the abuse she suffered after, domestic violence that I witnessed as a boy. So yeah, it was a very personal song for me.
Absolutely. I mean, in listening to the song, you can really feel that emotion behind it. How did your mom react when you told her about it, or when she heard it for the first time?
I haven't talked to her about that song, and I don't know if she's even heard my new album yet. But she has heard all the music prior to this album. So it's a discussion we haven't had, and we usually don't talk about those kinds of things because it gets really uncomfortable for not only her, but for me. But I think it's a conversation yet to happen.
Yeah, and I certainly think the lyrics from that song, I'm sure, have sparked other conversations with other families as well, because as you say, it is a difficult subject just to kind of bring up. I wonder, you mentioned her experience in residential school and how maybe it's something you've learned about more recently. As you're learning about it, are you seeing the impact that her experience has had on your life?
Yes, I always knew that something horrible happened to her. We grew up in a very broken home, a lot of alcohol my entire life, so it was very, very broken, very dysfunctional, a lot of violence, a lot of drinking. We were separated, all my siblings, put up for adoption. We were spread out from a young age. So that residential school definitely had an effect on our family and my life. And, we as a family found each other much later in life when we were in our teens, and are very close now as a family. And I think we're all doing really well. I think for us, it was definitely about wanting to break that cycle and wanting to have a safe, loving, nurturing home for our families. And my wife and I know my other siblings, have done that, and we've done the best we could, as parents, and continue to do that today.
Fanshawe College has always offered a wide range of programs, and that now includes micro-credentials. So with these courses, you can earn digital badges to add to your social profiles, and there are so many to choose from, including diversity and inclusion for leaders, fostering employee engagement, even podcasting. Those are just a few of the options, and the best part is that they are all verified by Fanshawe College, a trusted institution that is a leader in part-time adult education. You can find out more about Fanshawe's micro-credentials at the link in the show notes. I mean, I'm happy there is this kind of, happier point in time now where you've been able to reunite with your siblings. And it sounds like you have all been through so much, and even your home there, a lot of people might recognize the name, the Attawapiskat First Nation from the news, because the community has faced some very difficult times. It was in the news when there was a suicide crisis there in 2015, 2016. There have been ongoing issues with contaminated water. And I do want to hear more about that, but before that, can you tell us, other than what we might know from the news, what do you want people to know about the community of Attawapiskat and the people there?
We're doomed. Just kidding. We're, quite often we're depicted, as being very dark and troubled. Yes, we are troubled. We do have issues here, and I think we're like any other community. But because we're a small community, and because I think, things are sort of magnified, the issues that we have up here. And of course, things spill into mainstream media, and quite often what we see is the worst of these communities up here. And we don't see the good stories, or we don't hear about the good stories and the good things that are happening up here. There's no doubt that we are a community that has been struggling. We've, in a lot of ways, we've lost our way as a community, but we're rallying. I see it every day. People I talk with, and people that I go out to gatherings with here in the community, people are wanting change. People are we want to get our mojo back. Attawapiskat used to be one of the most innovative communities here in the north. I think we were the first community in all of Canada to actually get its own high school. We self-financed the school. So there's been a lot of, really cool things that went on in the past, and we just kind of went off course over the years, and but we're starting to find our way, and I think there's going to be some real changes around here in the coming years. We have some young, bright people that are up and coming leaders, and I really look forward to playing some kind of role, or being a part of that in the near future. We have our problems, but we also have a lot of wonderful things that are happening here. Some of the things that I love about my community is that everyone is willing to help one another when we're in trouble, when we're in need. We don't leave each other behind. When people are struggling financially or with food, know that your neighbor is there to help you, always. We help each other out when we're in difficult circumstances, like perhaps maybe we are stuck out on the land. People are going to come and look for you and find you and help you get home safely. Those are some of the things I really love about my community. People truly care in that way. And there's many other things, I think the landscapes up here are beautiful. We have so much land, and there's so much potential here. Like, it's just unbelievable. Once we're able to realize that potential someday, this community is going to be a lot better off than what we've seen.
Thank you for sharing that. I know I was a news reporter in my previous life, and I know sometimes when something major is happening, like the suicide crisis in 2015, 2016, the media kind of parachutes in, they tell that story, and then they leave. And it's one aspect of a community. So I really appreciate you kind of sharing more and giving us kind of painting that picture of a lot of the great things that are happening there too. You have also used your music and your platform to draw attention to some of the issues in Attawapiskat. What kind of responses do you get from people who maybe are hearing about some of this for the first time through your music?
Well, I think most of the responses have been very positive. There's always a few negative responses that I get, which is expected. I mean, you got to roll with the punches, I guess. But overall, I think they're positive, and I think for me, using my platform, using my voice to spark conversations, to invite people in to talk, to sit down and talk about the message that I'm bringing to people through my music. I've always wanted to do it in a way that invites them in, and not punch you in the face with the music. So I've done it that way for so long until I recently put out a song called Politician Man, which is the most politically charged song I've ever put out. And it's a protest song. It's full on, in your face, punch you right in the nose.
Hey, Mr. Politician Man, what you done for me lately? Whoa. Hey, Mr. Politician Man, won't you break me off a piece someday? Whoa.
But I never as a person would break people down, and sometimes our humanness gets the best of us. We get frustrated and we say things that we don't mean in the moment of anger or in a moment of frustration. But I certainly would never wish anything bad upon anyone, and certainly don't want to break anyone down, especially our politicians and our leaders, our chief and councils, because that will get us nowhere.
I often think that music and comedy are two of the best ways to provide an entry point to talk about difficult topics. Because you can do it in kind of a lighter way, but it can still spark those serious and impactful conversations. And as I was asking the previous question, I was definitely thinking about your song Politician Man, because I imagine a lot of people had a lot of questions for you after that. So tell me more about some of the conversations that it led to.
Well, I mean, for me, I guess some of the early conversations that I've had, I sometimes have been quick to paint everyone with the same brush, where I feel like a lot of Canadians don't care about Indigenous issues. But I learned that that's not true. There are people out there, a lot of people that care and that want to learn and that want to sit down and talk through some of these things. I've talked about water. We've talked about suicide in our communities with a lot of different people. We've talked about leadership. So there's been so many things that have been sparked through my encounters with music and people. Most of it's been positive, and I think music, like you said, and comedy is a way in to have these conversations. It really breaks down some of those barriers that we put up. I see it happen all the time when I'm on stage, and afterwards I talk to people and just have some really neat conversations.
I couldn't agree more with that. And, on that note, I know reconciliation is also something you've talked about in your music, also something that you are working on as you are an artist ambassador of the Downey Wenjack Fund. Of course, that's a fund started by Gord Downey. What has your work with the Gord Downey Fund been like? Have you seen progress through the work that you're doing there?
Well, early on, going back, 3-4 years now, I did quite a bit of work with the Downey Wenjack Foundation as an artist through their Artist Ambassador program. And I thought there were a lot of good moments, during my presentations and my visits to schools. I did a lot of virtual stuff as well with them, and they certainly have since then. They've certainly grown as an organization, and they have. Their Artist Ambassador program has just grown substantially since I was a part of it. I was part of their pilot, actually their pilot program, and since then it's grown quite a bit. And I've seen the impacts they've made. I think it's important going into these schools, particularly they have toolkits that they put into a lot of schools right across Canada, and most of the schools that I had engaged with were non-Indigenous schools. And I think that's where their big focus is to educate Canadians and making sure that they have the tools and things and resources they need to inform themselves and their students.
What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions that Canadians have about our Indigenous communities?
That we're a drain on the Canadian economy. I've heard that in my previous work. I think that we get handouts is another one. I think that the other thing is that people think we have an advantage because we don't pay taxes, and that they think we get everything for free, which is not true. We are actually at a major disadvantage compared to most Canadians. And yeah, I mean, look at me. I'm in Attawapiskat, and launching a music career from here has been damn near impossible. But I've been able to find ways to kind of, be able to launch a music career from here. But because in so many ways I'm so far from everything, and the internet is very unstable most days, and even just exchanging files on the internet, most people won't kind of buy into that. And they're like, even not being able to deliver files to producers on the other end, and not being those timelines because the internet is just so unstable. I mean, people just won't really buy into it. They think you make excuses, but that's the reality up here. There's a lot of disadvantages. I think people don't understand that. And a lot of ways, we're still living in the dark ages up here. Not a lot has changed in the last 20, 30 years. So, very underserviced. So, I think, if we were given everything for free, I think we probably would be doing a lot better off than we are now. That's for sure.
You have really had to get creative with your music career out there. So maybe you can tell us a bit more about that, and even how your studio came to be.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had a little studio. It's either been in the porch or in a small room, like most musicians and artists have their little space that they try to create or create demos particularly in. So this space actually that I'm in now is the do-it-yourself recording studio I built out of a sea can. When it became clear that I wasn't going to be able to travel and do anything once the pandemic hit, there were some opportunities that were lost. There were some opportunities that were still in grasp for me, but that meant that I'd have to create myself a space like this. And that's what we did. I basically built this thing with my bare hands. I had the help of a couple of friends here in the community to make it all happen. And we got this thing powered up. We got heat in here. We have pretty much everything I need to record an entire album here. I have, I'm able to track drums, track guitars, vocals. I got pretty much everything. So it's quite remarkable that I'm able to work from here. The solo debut album I put out actually part of it was recorded in the studio in the past year. And the other part of it was recorded in Nashville. So that to me is like, I don't know. And then it's kind of mind-boggling, but I didn't know what to expect. It was actually a pretty scary thing to kind of say, okay, we're going to record an album remotely, and for it to turn out the way it did, to get such a beautiful record out of it. And I didn't know what to expect, and I couldn't be more happy with how it turned out. And I'm certainly even more happy that I decided to go ahead and build this studio.
It's a beautiful album. I would have never guessed any of that backstory of, recording part of it there, recording part of it in Nashville. That must have been a little bit stressful, I imagine, in the moment, wondering how it would all come together.
Yeah, I was worried about internet issues and, all that stuff that I've struggled through, in previous projects. But we got through it, and, everything kind of cooperated with us, technically, and, all the technology sort of, behaved for us for that 6 weeks or whatever it was that the time we recorded the album in.
Your advocacy work and your music are very intertwined. And I wondered, as I was listening to the album, was that something that happened naturally for you, or as you were making this decision to leave your CEO job, was it more of a conscious effort to kind of marry those two interests together?
Yeah, I mean, it was always a conscious decision for me to intertwine those two things. My advocacy work kind of sort of evolved. Like, I never really thought I would be doing advocacy work as an artist. And I've certainly been very vocal about it, but not publicly, and not really through the music up until the last few years. And I've never been known to put out any tweets or anything on social media up until a couple of years ago. And I always felt like there was a lot of people out there that are kind of leading the charge, with the other artists and other people that are out there from the Indigenous communities that have been leading the charge. And I always kind of tiptoed around for so long. And it was the water thing. One day, sitting there eating breakfast, and it was not long after we were told that our water was so contaminated that you couldn't even breathe the vapors from the tap. You couldn't bathe in it longer than 2 minutes. You couldn't rinse your food in it. And I was so upset. I saw a tweet from one of our politicians about how clean the water was in Ottawa. And it just did something to me, And here I was, never having access to clean water my whole life, and now my kids and now my grandkids. Like, that really did something to me. And it's not about me anymore. It's about my kids and my grandkids. And if I sit idly and do nothing or say nothing, then I'm part of the problem.
Well, no, it's really powerful to hear that. And it sounds like that moment of seeing that tweet about the clean water in Ottawa was almost another turning point for you.
Yeah, it sure was.
So as you reflect on your turning point, that decision 4 years ago to leave your CEO job, obviously so much has happened since then, a lot of it unpredictable with the pandemic, having to build your own recording studio. Is there anything that, looking back and reflecting now, is there anything that you would change?
No. I can't think of anything that I would do differently. The one thing I probably would have done differently was pursue music a lot earlier. When you become a parent, and a husband, those things kind of get put on the back burner. So that's what I did for so long. And I think that would probably be the only thing I would do differently is, maybe keep music in the forefront instead of putting it out to the back burner.
Hearing you talk about what you've done with your music during the pandemic, you built your own studio, you managed to record this album, part of it there, part of it in Nashville. I mean, you must be so excited for things to go back to normal because you'll be free to do so much more, and you've already done so much during the pandemic. So what are you most looking forward to?
I'm actually looking forward to getting back and performing on the stage. I kind of feel left out right now because I see a lot of the, my peers and people that I know in the industry that they're out touring now. They've announced their tours. They're performing. Me, I chose not to because there was a lot of uncertainty around the lockdowns up here. It seemed like everything else that was going on in terms of restrictions in the country, it seemed like the reserves, like the Indigenous communities, were like tenfold. So we were just like, anyway, we decided that because of the uncertainty with the lockdowns, we were still in lockdowns in the summer. So it's just like, it's too unpredictable. Let's just push everything back to the new year. So that's what we decided. But I'm feeling kind of left out here. And that's one of the things I look forward to getting back to doing is performing.
Well, and I'm sure you have a lot of people who are excited to see you back on stage. Hopefully I will get to see you on stage one of these days too. I really appreciate you making time to share your story, to share your turning point today. It was such a pleasure talking to you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was really fun.
And thank you to all of you for watching and listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, leave us a comment. Of course, you can subscribe on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube. And hey, if you or someone you know has a turning point, you can also email us at turningpoint@priyasam.com. Thanks again for joining us. And until next time, take good care of yourselves and of each other.